Hi again, Risa here, back with another episode of Ask Risa. This is my fortnightly video series where I discuss some common wedding planning questions and problems you might be having if you're trying to plan your own wedding. I have been doing a series on how to plan a wedding during a pandemic, which of course we are all dealing with right now. At this point, it's late June, mid-June. We still aren't allowed to have weddings, at least here in California. Gatherings of multiple households are still prohibited, but eventually we are hopefully going to be able to have weddings again. But the pandemic is not going anywhere anytime soon, so we're probably gonna have to think of ways to keep everybody safe while also still having a wedding. So I've been doing this series. This is the third one I have done. I started out of order. And I started with talking about what you can do to entertain your guests in lieu of dancing, because packing the dance floor, not an option right now. Last time I talked about guest arrival and sort of the pre-ceremony stuff and the ceremony. This week I thought I was gonna talk about cocktail hour and dinner, but I have 5 pages of notes here, so I don't think I can fit all that into a reasonably short video. So I'm gonna cover probably just cocktail hour, like the transition from the ceremony to the cocktail hour to dinner today. And then I'll come back next week and I will talk about actual dinner because I just apparently have a lot to say. So typically at the end of the ceremony, after the couple walks out, parents walk out, bridesmaids, all those people walk out, the guests all just sort of get up and funnel themselves down the aisle and head for the bar at cocktail hour. So again, we're trying to keep people away from each other. We're trying to socially distance. So we don't want to create a bottleneck like that where everybody's funneling into the same path down the aisle. I mentioned in my last video that you could have no seating at your ceremony site and just ask everyone to stand, because it's easier for people to keep their distance if they're standing and not seating. That also would make it easier for people to sort of disperse from the ceremony site without congregating and getting each other's way in each other's way. They can just kind of go their own way and make their way over to the cocktail hour area. If you do have seating, I recommend blocking off the edge of the seats that lines the aisle. So you've got the aisle and you've got all the seats. Only let people come into and out of the rows on the perimeter. Use ribbon or something to block off, you just swag the ribbon between each chair. That way people can't get into the aisle, into the rows from the aisle. So that way when they leave, that gives them a little bit more physical space to leave the rows instead of all going down the aisle. So that's sort of helpful. And then when they do leave and they're heading over to cocktail hour, you don't want everybody heading for the bar all at once. So you want to give people multiple ways to get a drink, whatever the drinks are and whatever kind of drink they want. So I have a couple of different ideas. One is have some pre-poured glasses of easy stuff like water, white wine, red wine, sparkling wine, and have those on tables with little paper covers over them, over the top of them, so that people aren't breathing on them. And don't put like 100 of them all on one table. Just have maybe a dozen on a table here, a dozen on a table over there, a dozen on a table over there. Clearly signed with indications of what's in the glasses, and that way people can gravitate toward the table that they want. If they want red wine, they can head over there. And then waitstaff can replenish the supply of glasses as people take them. Second choice, and these are not exclusive, like you can do all of these in order to maximize beverage opportunities. So waitstaff can tray pass your signature cocktails. You'll want to choose something that's fairly easy to make ahead and or batch, so you can make a whole bunch of them at once. The bartenders can dispense them, and then waitstaff can walk around with the tray that has like 3 of one signature cocktail and 3 of the other signature cocktail. So if they're only carrying around 6 drinks at a time, not that many people are gonna swarm them at any given moment. You are gonna need extra waitstaff for this, but as you'll hear from a lot of what I say, it's going to require more staffing. Like that's definitely a trade-off. You can either have extra staff and keep your guests safe, or you can save money on staff and endanger the lives of all your guests. You decide which one you want to do. So tray passed for some people, for some drinks, stationary tables for other drinks, and then still have a bar, but have more than one bar, at least two probably. Gatherings aren't going to be allowed to be very large for very long. I think even when weddings start up again, we're going to be limited to 50, maybe 100 people. But the days of having a wedding with 300 guests, those are gone until the pandemic is 100% contained, like measles. And we're not, I mean, don't get me started on the resurgence of measles thanks to anti-vaxxers. But anyway, till there's a vaccine for COVID-19 and we've all but eradicated this disease, I think that weddings are going to be limited for some time to come. So if you're thinking of having a 300-person wedding, you should probably change your plans now because that's not going to happen. So, but you still should have at least a couple of bars where people can go to get a drink if it's not one of the drinks that's being passed around, it's not one of the drinks that's at the stationary table, something like that. And again, signage is your friend, you know, much like at the grocery store. You remind people to stand 6 feet away from the person in front of them in line at the bar. Bar signage is also helpful because then people will know what's available. So that way they don't make it big. Like it should be a big sign that's stationed somewhere with high visibility so that people can see it without having to get close to it and having to get close to everybody else. So those are some options for serving drinks that don't involve everybody rushing to the bar. The other thing we usually serve during cocktail hour is appetizers. And often we will tray pass those, and you know, the waitstaff will offer a tray to people and they'll have a napkin, a pile of napkins in one hand and a tray in the others, and the guests will take the appetizer, take the napkin, go on their way. You don't really want guests reaching or breathing on food that other people are going to have access to. But you also can't just put the food down on a table because, again, there's going to be too many people around it and breathing on it. So my suggested solution for this is to pre-plate all of the appetizers. So usually you're going to have a few chosen appetizers. Let's assume, for argument's sake, you've chosen 3 different appetizers to be served during cocktail hour. Kitchen staff, catering staff, whoever, should just prepare a whole bunch of little plates, and every plate should have one of each appetizer on it. And then waitstaff can go around with trays and just, the waitstaff can be masked and wearing gloves. They can just hand the plates with the appetizers to guests, and that way guests aren't reaching onto the tray. They're not getting that close to the person with the tray. The stuff can be handed to them. And, you know, maybe somebody's going to end up with an appetizer they don't like. That's the risk. Maybe you're going to spend a little bit more on appetizers. Again, it's kind of a trade-off. Do you want to have a wedding or not? Because these are going to be the only safe ways to do these things. So you have to decide what's more important to you. Having the wedding and doing it safely, or just not having it at all and eloping. Then as we get people, as cocktail hour winds down, usually I as the wedding planner will go around to people and tell them it's time to move wherever dinner is. Like I'm trying to move them from one place to another. And invariably people have not yet figured out where they're going to sit or where they're supposed to sit. So they'll crowd around the seating chart, or they'll crowd around the escort table where I've laid out individual tented cards. And then they'll all sort of herd into the reception space. Again, this is not good. This is not what we want. So instead of having just one large escort card sign or one big escort card table with all the attendees on there, you should break it up into 3 or 4 smaller signs or smaller tables with escort cards on them. Do it alphabetically. So like do A through G, H through M. It depends on what last names your guests have. So if you have 100 guests, do 4 groups of 25 or something like that. But you'll have to break it up by name. because you don't want to separate people who all have the last name that starts with M. You don't want part of them to be on one side and part of them to be on the other side. So you have to find good breaking points for that. So you're just trying to avoid guests clustering around each other. The other thing you can do is have signage made that shows the actual floor plan so people can see which tables are where. So we always have a floor plan and the numbered tables appear on the floor plan, whether they're circular or long tables or whatever. So I have never in my life printed those out for anybody for any reason. Usually I have it, the catering staff has it, the venue has it, that's it. But it does make it harder for guests to find their tables if they don't know where they're going. So if you have a room and tables 1 through 5 are going to be on the left and 6 through 10 are going to be on the right, if the guests can see in advance, oh, my table is going to be on the right, then we can direct them. Hopefully the room or building that they're going to has multiple entrances. We can direct them to go to the correct entrance so that they end up on the right side of the room already, and they don't have to wander through the whole reception space looking for their table. If you're outside, if you're having dinner outside, this is slightly easier because everything outside is safer, but you could still do the same thing. I mean, there's still going to be a layout even though you're outside and not in a room, and it just gives people a little bit more information to go on so that they can find their table more easily and without contaminating other space that isn't their space. If you are going to be going inside and the building doesn't have multiple entrances, then you don't want everybody entering at the same time. You don't want a crush of people feeding into that building. So in that case, you're going to have to enlist the aid of your DJ. And much like releasing tables to go to a buffet, which I'm going to talk about later, it would kind of be the opposite. Instead, the DJ would be announcing tables to go in and have a seat at their table. So again, it would be important for people to know which table they're sitting at and where their table is. And so the DJ will say, okay, table 8, go sit down, go have a seat at your table. Then table 7 and then 6. Usually the parents are seated at the tables closest to the couple. So their tables are often tables 1 and 2. So you can either start with them or finish with them, depending on which way you want to go. But you'll have to enlist your DJ to help you with that. And I'm already at the 12.5-minute mark, so I'm definitely going to stop here. And then I will do a second video covering the actual dinner service at the reception because I have a lot to say about that as well. And I'll release that video next week. So sorry in advance that I had to break this up into 2, but there's just so many details to consider when you're trying to keep your guests safe. So that's it for cocktail hour and then transitioning into reception. And next week I will publish the video discussing actual dinner and dinner service. All right. So let me know if you have any questions and I will see you soon. Bye for now.